we have now learned about Wander the Bull and Giver the Bear. So let's take a look at some of these forces and these two characters in action in some real life examples. And we're going to go back to our trusty case studies that we've been starting to dig more and more, deeper and deeper into. First example here, and remember, what are we going to look at these maps as a battlefield, but a battlefield of not only past battles, but where some future battles may happen. So you pull up a chart like this and you see, okay, we've gone over the candlestick already. We now know that this is a type indecision / reversal, hammer candle, however it functions best in your mind. Okay, we know that. We know that recently the price has been falling and the forces have been selling. But now, location. Like I've said, charting, real estate, have some similarities. This is the big one. It's all about location. So the question now is, remember the process. Kindergarten, what color is it? Red. Then look at the body size, look at the shadows. When you get through all that, now you ask yourself, all right, so where's the location of it? Is there any sort of significant location? Well, now that we have learned about supports and resistance levels, let's see if there's any history of Wander the Bull having a fortress anywhere. And what I see is right here as being a fortress. What do I mean by that? Well, let's just go back through it. I totally understand that all this is still kind of new, but I'm just going to get this line out of the way for now so you can see the lows a little bit better. But remember, lower shadows. Lower shadows are where areas of support are going to be. And when you have groups of lower shadows all bunched together, that's going to create a level of support, because that's going to show that every time the bears try to press down through, the bulls are able to fight them back off and push it back up. So what do I mean? Well, let's look at all these lower shadows. And remember, what type of effect? Don't forget about the web effect. They're not going to be all the exact same place, but so we have that low. And then we have that low right there. Now, if I bring this line up, I think we can agree that this line has quite a bit of history where you can see multiple times, Giver the Bear, try to push down through. Nope, everybody wanted shares. Giver the Bear, nope, everybody wanted shares. Giver the Bear, push down, everybody wanted shares. Giver the Bear, nope, everybody wanted shares. Giver the Bear, nope, everybody wanted shares. Giver the Bear, nope, everybody wanted shares. And then a nice upwards move right there. And then again here, price fell back down. But hey, look, people got gimme again right at the same level. So looking at it from a charting perspective, those that use charts, notice this area right here of previous lows. And I can guarantee there were some that were here, accumulated, bought some shares just based off of prior knowledge on the chart, and then got a very nice move as the price has since headed back up here before pulling back again. And now that brings us to the current perspective, pulling back again. And what type of candle formed? An indecision, a potential bounce candle, a reversal candle. Where has it formed? Well, look at that, right at this area where many times before upwards moves have happened. Interesting. Now, sure, yes, the price did fall through, but what does that mean kind of from just one side of the coin? Yeah, it fell through, but what about the other side of the coin? The other side of the coin is the bulls fought back and pushed the price back upwards, as we've discussed. And now that the price is back up above the support, it's still an area of support. So therefore, it's really, okay, wow, now I have that much more reason why I should be looking at this candle and seeing what happens, because the location is very interesting. It's formed right back around this area here, which hopefully I'm making a good solid case and showing that previous history has definitely shown that Wander the Bull has built a fortress here, and once again it has held. It kind of tricked the bears. Remember, the fortress has multiple layers. So yeah, the bears got beyond the moat. They probably got above that first wall, but then one of the interior walls stopped them, and then the bulls fought, and closed it all the way back up there. So this fortress is still intact. If there's a flag flying up above the fortress, it would still have Wander the Bull's face on it, and that's what you want to see. Now let's talk about a couple areas of potential resistance, meaning if this price does bounce, where are some areas that you could see some resistance? Now remember, resistance is going to be the exact opposite. This is where there's fair. This is where people have been selling. This is where there are a supply of shares. However that functions best in your mind. So now support, we looked at what shadows? The lower shadows. Resistance, we're going to look at where are these upper shadows. So looking at the chart, it's totally fine if nothing sticks out to you quite yet. But the first area of resistance, let's just kind of look at, do we see any big batches or groups of upper shadows? And to me, you start to see, all right, and then you come over here. Now remember, not exact, but I think everyone can agree that, within this zone or web, there seems to be quite a bit of upper shadows. So therefore, that looks like give the bear, for whatever reason, it seems like there's a lot of people that want to give shares up around that area. So this would be a very important level of resistance on any sort of bounce. But what's the other crucial concept, crucial component of support and resistances? It was on the final slide. When support is broken, it becomes what? A resistance. When a resistance is broken, it becomes what? A support. And I bring that up because I want to point out this area right here. Actually, I should try to split the difference there. I feel better with it. So let's look at this area right here. Price bounced up, and you can see shorter term acted as support during this portion. So let's just look at it right here. So the price got up here, and then look at that lower shadow right here, basically at that red line. Lower shadow, basically right there at that red line. So again, in a little short time frame, okay, the bulls seem to have a little kind of miniature, kind of maybe like, picture it as like an outpost. Not a massive fortress, but it seems like they're trying to establish a new little fortress right there. Again, lower shadow, pretty darn close, well within the web of that line. Again, temporary broke below it, just like that one didn't quite hit it. This one dropped slightly below it, but by the time this candle was done closing, bulls had fought back. So again, right here around that line. Didn't quite get close to it that time, but again, look at that. Basically a beautiful bounce off of it at that point. Again, didn't get close. So let's fast forward. And after this candle, now what happens at this point? Let's do this real quick. During this portion, this is when it acted as support. I don't want to start to confuse yourselves with, I keep forgetting in my mind, this is all second nature, but this is the first time you've been looking, so I want to keep the colors together. So again, green support during this whole portion, all these lower shadows bouncing right here, well within the web of this green line, which is the technical support level that has established itself in the shorter time frame. And then, all that action, and then on this day here, price closes below it. So what happens? This is a representation of the bears having overtaken the bulls' fortress. Again, this fortress which was established back here, which we just went through candle by candle. So the bears moved on in. They kicked out poor Wanter. The bull giver, the bear, now owns the place. So therefore, this level becomes a resistance. Supports, when broken and closed below, become resistances. Therefore, this level is now an area of resistance. So we have this candle, and now it's a matter of, actually, we need to add in one more area of resistance. And maybe you see it, maybe you don't, but this one comes simply up here. Now, you're thinking, well, could you use that one? I would use this one down here. Why would I use that one? Because if you look at the history of everything, you can see that there's actually more price data right around this area here. There's only one piece of information up there. Now, if you wanted to use that, I mean, you're not going to get any sort of disagreement from me. But me personally, I would just use that one again because, as you can see, the white dots, we have 4 white dots right around this area of the chart relative to just one up there. So that tells me that that may be some sort of outlier, maybe not the most accurate data point, But if we have 4 of them right here around this area, for me and my personal comfort level, I would feel better up there around that area. So that's where I would put that resistance. So in other words, now what the chart's going to allow us to do is to be able to gauge the strength of any sort of upwards move, of any sort of price bounce. The more of these levels that are broken, the stronger and stronger, the chart becomes in the bull's favor. Remember, what needs to happen in order for a breakout to happen? The want is going to need to overwhelm the give. We need to expect that there's going to be willingness to give shares at each of these levels, but if there's enough want, enough greediness, enough me, then the price will be able to close above each of these. So let's now see what happens. We'll go a little quicker since we've been through the kind of unfolding of these before. So again, another kind of hammerish bottoming candle forming right here at this level of support. That's that much more attractive. And really, look at this down here. Do you see maybe another new area of support that's forming? I would say right down here, look at those 2 lower shadows. Basically bounced off the exact same level. In fact, let's assign a number to those. So let's see, that low went as low as 23.87. That low went as low as 23.86 or 81. So yeah, within 6 cents of one another. I would say there seems to be a new little area of support trying to form down here right around the 23, kind of split the difference. One was 23.87, this one was 23.81, so let's call it 23.84. Maybe a new area of support that's forming. And look at that. Isn't that amazing? Remember this area of resistance that we drew, right up here at this line on the bounce. So, want, and then, this is where, the bears go into, defense mode. They are getting ready to defend their fort, and look at that. Very nice defense of their fort. The bulls did get up there, did battle, but you can see by the upper shadow and the length of it, they did knock back down the bulls. Again, you can see got up right within the web area. Again, failure by the bulls. And then right there, now you can see, oh, well, that's a pretty significant move for a candle. Not only was the candle, not a huge authoritative candle, but I think we can all agree that this was a big-bodied green candle. So it broke up there and got above this level of resistance, which is fantastic. That is progress in the right direction. The what overwhelmed what? If you're saying the want overwhelmed the give, absolutely. Now what else do we have to do? What do resistances become when they are closed above? They become supports. So right here, the bulls have taken back their fort like they had over here, and now this line is green again. So made more progress, and then look at that again. Price, they did battle, and then you can see by that upper wick, upper shadow, got knocked back down and closed below. So this level is still technically an area of resistance. And then that one happened. And then look again. Is it any coincidence? Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So now what needs to happen with this level? This level was a resistance, but because want has overwhelmed give, the bulls have now moved in, raised their flag, and now Wanter the bull has a new house. So Wanter the house is kind of like a real estate mogul taking over this chart right now. Now they have own properties here, own a property here, own a new property up here. Now they're trying to move into another property. But is it shocking that where this candle kind of, because this is an authoritative type candle, no doubt about it. But isn't it interesting? Isn't it kind of neat, at least from my perspective, that despite this huge authoritative candle, look right where it just happened to stop and start to show some struggling signs. Oh, look, right over here, where in the past history, there have been sellers. There has been a history of giving of shares, of supply of shares, and that's right where this authoritative candle finally stopped. I mean, think about it. Beast mode, beast mode, beast mode, beast mode, beast mode, beast mode. Oh, kind of running out of gas temporarily. Nothing that can't be broken, but it just is amazing how strong this candle is. Strong, strong, strong. And then right where it decides to kind of, stop on the day is right. Oh, look over here at this area of resistance. These previous highs where there have been a history of the price getting knocked back down. And then, of course, from there, the price separates. And this is the final conversion from support, or excuse me, from resistance into support. So now there's all sorts of areas of support here. And, Giver the Bear is going to have a very hard time, trying to revisit these lows, because there are all these areas of support now going forward. And we'll leave it at that. But, very interesting how, the supports and resistances act. I mean, from here, struggle to get through that resistance, even though just temporarily. And then this big authoritative candle, big old body, just happened to stop and show signs of struggling right there at that level. But then the next period did gap up above it, and then converted that one into a support. So hopefully now you're seeing, oh wow, candlesticks combined with previous history, in other words, supports, resistances, you can really gauge the strength. So goes without saying, but was this a pretty strong bounce? This was a very powerful bounce. But how do you know, what gives us the right to say it was very powerful? Because when we now start to incorporate in resistances and seeing how the price converted all these resistances into supports, this was a very impressive move. I mean, it was just converting one after another after another. When bulls are converting bears into bulls, in other words, resistances getting converted into supports, that is a very good sign. And it gives us reason to say, yeah, wow, this was quite the powerful move. For our next example, hopefully you're starting to remember each of these candles, but now things have kind of been turned around a little bit. We are at an area where, as you remember from the candle, at one time, I mean, this has been a very, up, a very wanting type environment. People gimme shares. The sheep, however, possible wolf candle, have things turned. But now that brings, well, how do we know if things have really turned? I mean, sure, you can just say, well, if the price goes down. But how do we measure the authority, the kind of downwards momentum of any sort of pullback? Well, now let's talk about more areas of support. But before we do that, let's start with resistance. Where do you see some potential resistance for this? If you're thinking, I really don't see any. I mean, I see one, but besides that, it's not like that other chart where we had a bunch of other, previous area to go by. Absolutely. If you're looking back here, remember we want to look at previous history. There are no shadows. There's no history of shadows up in this area of the chart. So you look here, wow, where is anything? There's nothing up there. So yes, in these situations, sometimes the price is going to be in an area where there's just simply not any previous data you can go on. Now we have another tool we can use, but that comes later on in the course. But for this sake, if you're saying, well, it looks to me like the only area of resistance is up here, because remember, upper shadows are just little individual resistances in and of themselves, then absolutely. So if we just move that line up there, and you say, well, the highest this move went was at 60.41, so I'm going to call 60.41 the area of resistance. Absolutely, you are right. There's no other problem with that. Like I said, we could zoom up the chart, and you're like, well, let's look back, see if there's anything more. Nope. Let's go back a little bit more. I mean, there's literally, you look, there is just nothing, no data in this part of the chart. So sometimes you just have to kind of, it is what it is. Like I said, there is a tool we can use, but in this case, the only area of resistance that we can really, forecast and say that exists is just from this one candle here where, because keep in mind, remember, this was one solid green candle, and then when it finally stopped growing as a green candle and turned around, it was right up there at that 60.41 area. But let's talk about some areas of support. So this one, may seem a little bit different, but what we have to really look at kind of is where were some previous areas of resistance that this move here converted into supports. So that's kind of how I always look at it. And the first one that sticks out to me is going to be right down here in this area. Now, again, could you use that point right there? Exactly. Absolutely. You can see that price came up, and then the end of this upwards move was at that point, which implies, okay, this is where finally give overwhelmed the want for shares, because this was want, and then right there, okay, enough give, and then the price pulled back. But you could have said, well, what about there or something like this? I would put it right around that level here. Why is that the case? Well, again, let's go back to the dots. We have one data point up there. You have one there. Then you have one there. A data point right there. You may think, well, hey, Clay, wait a second. Why did you draw 2 data points on this one candle? Remember, the open and closing prices are data points too. So this point here, you had an opening right at this level, and then you had this dot right here. So now we're looking at 3 dots versus 1 right here versus 1 up there. So I would feel more comfortable saying, this was a previous area of resistance. And then right here, to actually add in another data point, look at that, acted as resistance right there. So I would say this would be a level that I would feel more comfortable with. However, this is where there's some flexibility. If you wanted to say that area was a form of resistance, or that area right there using that shadow, that's fine too. I mean, think about what we're debating. We're debating little areas. We're not debating should we use charts, or are supports and resistances valuable, or just we're not debating any of those things. We're debating here or down here. So it's not there's a big difference between debating where exactly should I put the this line, or should I use this line at all. As long as we're not debating should we use this line, then no problem at all. But we should be marking out supports and resistances, and as long as we agree on that, then getting hung up on little should I put it there or there, that's just not worth it. So I'm going to say that this was the previous area of resistance, but obviously the price has broken and closed above it. So now this is an area of support. So do you see any other kind of areas on the chart where there has historically been kind of groups of shadows? And the next one that I see is right here. Again, let's look at the history of the upper shadows. Upper shadow, rejected. Bulls tried again, rejected. Bulls tried again, rejected. Bulls tried again, rejected. And then when they finally did get a close above it, you can see a nice move followed. So is it safe to say that this area at one point in time was a level of resistance? Absolutely. Is the price now above it? Absolutely. Therefore, resistances become what? Supports. So this is another area of support. So now going through the history of the chart some more. Do you see any other highs or lows of candles? Well, what sticks out to me now is this area right here, and this is splitting the difference, as I like to call it. What do I mean by that? Well, now you could draw lines, you could draw a line here and then leave a line there and then another line down here, but I don't like to overwhelm myself with a bunch of different areas. Now you could do it, and maybe you're thinking, well, no, I mean, that doesn't overwhelm me at all. Then awesome, that's fine, and that works. It's all about your mind better than I know your mind and your mind's potential. So, but having too many lines is going to confuse me. So, like I said, you could draw one there, you could draw one down there. Why? Well, let's just reiterate. On this move here, you can see price came up, and then on the pullback, where's as low as it went before it went back up and made this new high? Low as it went right there. So that tells me, okay, there was somewhat of a support there. Same concept here. It pulled back. How low did it go before finally heading back up again? When as low as right there. Same concept here. On this move, how low did it go before finally going upwards again? Which brings to the next thing about trends when we talk about high or lows. Notice how this put in high or low after high or low. So interesting. So each of these could be levels of support, but like I said, I would want to just split the difference. So that I'd put it right somewhere around here. And I put just somewhere around here. Remember, they're not exact specific prices. We're just trying to figure out and map out in our minds where some of these key areas are. So that would be another area of support. And then the final one I'm going to talk about, already kind of gave away. I'm going to be right down around this point. Again, looking at the history of the chart, you can see price bottomed out there before heading up again. And then this pullback, look right where it happened to pull back again. Right here at this previous area right there. That showed where it bounced. So the price came down there. You can see those lower shadows and then bounced up from there again. So that tells me that that is another area of support. What else? So what is this battle map telling? Who's going to have to do a lot of work in order to accomplish things? The bears are going to have to do a lot of work, because if they want to make any progress in the downwards direction, so if they want to make any progress going down here, they're going to have all sorts of forts that they're going to have to overtake. Now, it's nothing impossible, but it's definitely why trend trading is so powerful, because lots of fortresses. How many fortresses do the bulls have to fight through if they want to keep on going up? Well, they just need to fight through that one right there. But again, what is this candle signal? What is it saying there is a potential of happening? It's letting us know that, hey, this upwards move, this want, this desire for shares, this greediness, this me, may be running out. Is the tide turning? Are the givers starting to feel stronger emotions of fear and confidence and saying, hey, you know what? I think this is as valuable as these shares are going to get. Time to go back down. At this point in time, we don't know. You're not going to know. However, we can use supports and resistances to gauge and get those questions answered. Is this a wolf candle? Are the sheep starting to be led to the slaughter? The more and more that the price closes below each of these, the more validation. Oh yeah, it looks like that lead sheep has definitely turned into a wolf. Or the other analogy, there's a beautiful river here. Just relaxing. What's that sound I hear? It sounds almost like a crashing noise. Is that a waterfall coming, or is this river about to go off the cliff? At this point in time, we don't know, but we do know enough to at least start to pay attention to it, because we have the candle, and we also know enough and now have the tools to be able to judge whether or not a waterfall is approaching, or the sheep are being led to the slaughterhouse. So let's see how it all plays out. So right there, no problem at all. Sure, not the best candle, but in terms of supports and resistances, it's not like anything has even been cracked. Again, you could consider this level right here a little miniature area of support, because that's on this candle that was as low as it went, and then on this candle didn't even break through that little mini area of support. So sure, candle wise, not the best looking candle, but as far as support's concerned, didn't even break the low of the previous day's candle right there. And then look at that. And on that same note, interesting where this candle forms right here at this area of support. So maybe this move is finally over, because interesting candle formed at a level of support. Now remember, everything needs confirmation. Okay, interesting. I wouldn't quite call it awesome confirmation, but hey, again, amazing how after this nasty gap down and all this drama here, look where all the drama is finally settling and finding bottom right here at this previous area of resistance, which is now a level of support. Interesting. And then right here, if this isn't a thing of beauty, I don't know what is, but you can't. So again, still working on confirmation, but the bears do make a little bit more progress. But where do the bears finally run out of progress on this candle? Right down here at, hey, look at that. So the lower of the shadow is basically exactly at this level of support. So just amazing, and truly a thing of beauty how that works out. So hammer candle here, the lower shadow, where the bulls finally started to fight back, was right here at that level of support. Gap up again. Now you may be thinking, oh, okay, wow, it's really maintaining this support. Well, it is maintaining it. However, this is a nasty candle. The gap up, and then it was just basically a gap and trap as it was down in red the rest of the day. So yeah, not the best looking candle. Now all of a sudden, what's happened? Well, the price has started to close below this area of support. So now this has been converted from support into resistance. So Giver the Bear now has a new piece of real estate property. But who knows? It's not like it closed that far below it. So if the price can get back above it, maybe the bulls can retake it, and then that happens. So what does this tell us? We have first, just from a candlestick perspective, as we've gone over, a big authoritative candle to the downside, and along with that, the price has just started to close, slightly below it. It's not really closed enough where I'm going to consider that a resistance quite yet, but any more closing below it, then I would turn that red. So right here, now what does that tell us? Why does this candle now become that much more effective, that much more, why does it become that much more ugly? Because we have other things to judge it by now. Now we're judging it by its proximity to that former area of support, which is no longer a support because the price has closed below it. So Giver the Bear has established another piece of real estate. So think about that. Before, when we were looking at candles, you're like, oh, wow, yeah, that was kind of a bad candle. But now all of a sudden it's, ooh, that's pretty brutal. Why? Ooh, brutal. because now we have things, we have reference points to judge it to. So as you can see, what does this also tell us now? It tells us that we could be seeing a pretty big fall coming. Why is that? Because technically speaking, the next area of support really isn't until all the way down here. So there's kind of a big space, from this area down where the price could potentially move. Now, there's no guarantee. However, like I said, looking at the chart, the next really stronghold of Wander the bull isn't until all the way down here. So, are the bears going to make a quick charge all the way down there? Don't know, but it's becoming a possibility. And at this point, it's pretty safe to say, well, maybe this is just going to be a pullback that could end. But this was definitely, a trip to the slaughterhouse, and it seems like there was a waterfall. We're getting more and more confirmation of that. So again, not very shocking to see another authoritative candle. There are no other fortresses at this point in time until down at this point. Next candle there is that crazy one. And I promise I'm not making this stuff up. I just went through and drew these lines. You probably don't believe that, and I don't blame you. But anyway, so let's look at this candle and diagnose it. So it opened here, it came down in this single period, crashed through that, and then where's the bottom of this candle? Right here. But think about it, is it really that oh wow, that is just shocking, that is so surprising? I don't think so, because you look back through here, and as we've already established, this area has multiple other occasions where it showed that, hey, the bulls are hanging out down here. Wander the bull seems to have some pretty big fortresses, and sure enough, on this crazy, crazy day where the drama got way out of control, look right where the bearish drama ended. It ended right here where it's ended many times before, and then it bounced up from there. So pretty amazing. And this area here didn't put up too much of a fight in terms of, looks like this area of support got stampeded pretty fast. But regardless, the bulls were able to push the price back up above there. Therefore, that level still acts as a level of support. And then if you remember, the price started to head back up from there. So amazing. I can guarantee there are some chart players that, were accumulating some down at that area. And, they made a very nice, had a very nice upwards move here. So another great example there. And one where, but you see it all the time. You see, prices act the way they do. Again, with that hammer candle, happened to bounce when that was an area of support. And then, just right there again. So supports and resistances combined with candlesticks, very nice. For a third example here, I'm going to start to pick up pace. I'm just going to start to, map things out. I mean, we'll still talk about them. So we have this candle here, bottoming candle, indecision, reversal, hammer, whatever works best in your mind. It's occurred after some downwards movement, but let's go into real estate mode now. So where exactly has it occurred location-wise? Do you see any other sort of history of those lower shadows and areas of where there may be some a history of wanting shares? And hopefully you notice, well, geez, Clay, look at these. I see this lower low, this low, that low, that low, that low. So yeah, these dots are all kind of in the same vicinity. So like I like to do, try to split the difference, and maybe split the difference by calling it right there. Why do I call it right there? Well, again, let's look at the dots. We have this dot there, this dot, so this is 1, 1, but then we have 1, 1 at basically the same exact spot. So you can see this low and then this low are essentially the same. So that's why I would put it right there, just because it gives it, having two at the exact same location kind of gives me the final, all right, that's where I would feel comfortable. But again, if you wanted to put the support there or there, I would have no problem with that. I mean, it makes rational, logical sense. And then to go along with it, you also notice, oh, hey, look, now we just got not 1, 2 dots, but after today's action, a third dot right there. It bounced off that area. So, this nice little candle, attractive candle, indecision candle, forming around an area where in the past there has been a history of price bounces. In other words, a history of want overwhelming give, and therefore creating upwards moves. Interesting. Maybe this is a bottom. And you could say maybe this is a bottom in and of the candlestick alone, as we've learned about. But now that when you add in supports into the mix, it becomes, oh, okay, now I can feel that much more confident in things. The probabilities become that much more in my favor. No guarantee, but at least we're picking up pieces to the puzzle that can help us feel better and let us know that, okay, we're making pretty logical and rational decisions. Now let's talk about some areas of resistance with any sort of bounce. And this first area of resistance, I'd be shocked if you got it, but to me it sticks out. But if you don't get it, it's definitely not intuitive or in your face or anything like that. But this first area that I see is located right up at this point in the chart. Now you're thinking, what are you talking about? You looked here, that's not any previous highs or anything. Well, yeah, but let's look back through the history of the chart. And more specifically, does this level have any sort of history as acting as anything in terms of support or resistance? Well, what I see is, okay, so this was a nasty, look at these authoritative candles. Boom, 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 and then right there, all of a sudden, bam. Want overwhelmed give, and the price bounced nicely. Then the price rolled back over, and look right where this hammer candle essentially bottomed out at. Right there at that previous area. Now remember, just because you have a hammer, confirmation is required. Was this candle confirmation? No. Not only did it gap down, not only was it red, but as you can see now, look, we have another piece of perspective. It gapped down below this area of support. So, nope, that hammer candle was not confirmed. But then look what happened. Price got back up above what? This previous area of support. And then look again. Acted as support multiple times. So there's a history here with this level of acting as support and therefore possibly resistance. So I would put a level of resistance right there. Again, if you didn't see that one, that's totally understandable. It's more of a hidden one in there. But in my mind, that this level carries a lot of historical significance in the chart. The next area of resistance hopefully is a little bit clearer, and hopefully you're saying, well, you look up here and there's quite a bit of data points right around this area. Absolutely. Let's take a look at them. So we had a high right there. We had another high, high, and then the price went buy. Sorry, that was a terrible joke. But regardless, you can see here, data. Lots of times, the give overwhelmed the want. The give overwhelmed the want. The give overwhelmed the want, basically 3 candlesticks in a row. So this is going to be another very crucial area of resistance on any sort of bounce. So let's see now how the price reacts. So nice authoritative candle there. It's approaching this battleground. Let's see how it reacts around there. Okay, takes a little break. And then look at that. Is it shocking that this upwards move basically stops right at that level of resistance? Not very shocking when you consider all the historical significance that level has. Oh yeah, I forgot about this move. All right, and then this move here just obliterates everything. So, besides the big authoritative candle, the gap up, the nice volume down here, how else do we now know that, what else gives us reason to go, oh wow, that was a big move? Well, in one period, this level did a whole bunch of converting. Converted this level of resistance into support, converted this one into support, and also tells us, all right, we now need to figure out and find out where some other areas of resistance are. So let's go and look for some more resistances. So you can look for groups of previous highs, and you can say, well, look at this. I see quite a bit of highs over here. Absolutely. Then you come over here and, oh, wait. Wow, okay. So what does that tell us? This was a level of resistance, no doubt about it, but the price even closed above this. So this is yet actually now another area of support. All right, so back to the drawing board in terms of finding levels of resistance. Let's look for some more kind of batches of highs. And the next one I see is going to be right here around that area. You can see basically 2 candles in a row. The price tried to bounce but could not get up above that area. So that's going to be a zone of resistance. And you can see right there. So is it shocking that that's where this big authoritative candle basically stopped? Well, when you match it up over here, no, that's not too shocking, because back at this history of the chart, That's the spot that knocked it down a couple times right there. So let's map out a couple more. Let's see the next kind of batch of price data right here. Why do I say batch of price data? Well, look here. This was an area of support, 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 and then when the price fell below it, acted as resistance, resistance, resistance. So a classic example of support turning into resistance, resistance, resistance. So that'll be another key area. And then the next one I'm going to put up in this area. Why that area? Well, this was the previous area of what? As you can see here, many candles bounce, bounce, bounce from that area, so acted as support. However, you can see right there, when the price did fall below it, the chart did not like that. So a break of this level of support created a big authoritative type candle, which was basically the beginning of this big deeper move there. So that's going to be another area of resistance. So now that we have another 3 mapped out, let's see how the rest of this goes. So consolidating, notice how this area right here now is acting as support right there. Acting as support. All right, the price has fallen below it, but now notice where this candle has kind of sat right back down on this area. So this is now an area of resistance. It's holding up there. Holding up, but now look at this. On this move back up, this area is now converted from support back into resistance, and now it's acted as resistance a couple times right there. And then a nice move up, and surprise, surprise, where does this, because this was a pretty crazy move. Price closed there, opened here, and then started to run. Price started to move. But where did the want run out? Oh, surprise, surprise, right here at this area of resistance, which now you have that many more data points of, and again, ran out of gas right there. So hopefully you're seeing the point, how all this works out. Supports turn into resistances, and then supports when, or in this case, when this was turned into resistance, you can see it acting as resistance. So everything just kind of flows and jives together like that. And if you're looking at the chart saying, wow, that's way too many lines, I mean, given the price is way up here now, feel free to, you can always say, you know what, yeah, I know that's the level of support, but I'd rather have the price get a little bit closer down there before I start mapping that out. Same with resistance. Maybe say, yeah, I know that's a resistance, but I'd rather have the price, first get above this area before I start worrying about that. Or, maybe I just want to get rid of that one right now and focus more on some other areas. I mean, it's all give and take. It's all a function of what works best with your mind, what helps your mind visualize the most. This chart with all those lines, that was getting to the point for me. That's a little too many lines. So it's definitely give and take. It's a case-by-case basis. And as I said earlier, your mind better than anybody else. You know what's going to make visualization easier than anybody else. So, definitely just listen to what your mind's saying. If you feel like there's way too much, lines and stuff, then yeah, tone it down a little bit and, find that happy medium for yourself. And we've obviously gone through 3. And what I want to do is we're not going to go through any more. We're going to make our way through the remaining of the 7 case studies we've been doing. But I want to keep talking about supports and resistances kind of throughout the entirety of this, course. So with each case study we go through for the different, as we add indicators and such, we'll still break down the supports and resistances for each case study. But this is going to allow us to have, this education sprinkled through the entire course rather than just hit you with, boom, all this on just 7 straight examples by spreading it out. Like I said, it'll keep our minds focused on this concept because it is a very crucial concept. One of the backbones and pillars of technical analysis. Identifying supports and resistance levels, supply and demand levels, want and give levels, whatever functions best for you in your mind. That's what we want to do. So yes, only 3, but rest assured we will get to the other 4 as we go through the different areas of the course. So the next time we come back and talk about supports and resistances, we're going to have a new indicator, and that indicator is going to be moving averages. So now you're going to see how candlesticks interact with supports and resistances, and those interact with moving averages. So we're just the puzzle is getting more pieces, but the more pieces, the more we can fit together, and you're going to get just that much more better and better of an overall picture. So I will see you back in the next video.